Unknowingly, I was a cog in the wheel of the great extermination machine created by the Third Reich. The machine had been smashed to pieces. The engine is broken, and I, too, must now be destroyed. The world demands it. You know, it's looking up, guys, because this is it. This is Jen.
This is Becky.
And this is too close to home, and we are ending the story of Rudolph Host, the Commandant of Auschwitz, our Nazi editions.
Nazi editions. Pow, 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 pow.
I know you're so excited to be over with this.
So am I.
We are thrilled to be done with it. So let's just go ahead and dive in. Do our sources one last time. The Commandant of Auschwitz, autobiography by Rudolph Host. KL, A History of Nazi Concentration Camps by Nicholas Washman. Definitely recommend that one if you have any kind of curiosity about Nazi death camps. You would say, who does? But look at your girl. That's me.
Hey, we need to, in all honesty, know our history of the world so we don't repeat it.
Exactly. Third Reich, The Fall and Rise on Netflix. Nazi Death Marches 1944-1945. Nazis in Nuremberg, The Lost Testimony. Telegraph UK, Smithsonian Magazine. Auschwitz.org. GeoPeople, Everyday Science. The Holocaust Encyclopedia. Seton Hall University. World Holocaust Remembrance Center, Jewish Currents Organization, Conference on Jewish Material Claims Against Germany, Music, and the Holocaust Organization, CNN, the Auschwitz-Birkenau Museum, PBS, National Library of Medicine, BBC, Holocaust History of Sorts blog, the Holocaust History Project, Jewish Virtual Library Org, FacingHistory.org, WW2 Foundation, and JewishGen.org.
That's a lot.
It is. I was sitting there thinking about like how we use our sources now versus when we first started. We'd have one, maybe two. Now I'm like, you know what? I have a little bit of a problem buying books.
Now I have a library in my home.
I never thought I would, since I call them libraries.
Hey, that's usually what I say too.
So last time we talked about his affair and then his big promotion to the WHFA. I think that's what it is. WVHA? It's a lot of abbreviations. I'm done with it, okay? I'm done with it. They were Nazis. That's what you need to know.
And bad.
Today we're going to finish his ill-fated story. So, now that he is working at this WHVA, now he was going to have unfettered access to all the documents about all the concentration camps, which he reportedly used to get an overall view of the camp system. You remember he loved creating Auschwitz and was very diligent. He spent his every waking hour, apparently. Obviously not if since he had an affair and all this other bullshit, but I digress.
True.
But he was very into the Nazi concentration camp efficiency and creating them. So while it was a desk job, it did have the perk of being able to travel and see all the concentration camps. I mean, who doesn't love that, right?
Doesn't love a tour.
This is really one of the most ridiculous attempts to look like he was an unwilling participant, but it really shows how much he believed in things. He would speak on how bad it had been in the camps and that he couldn't refuse orders, but also they weren't listening to him about the prisoners to choose and how to get more effective armament work out of them. But he would admit the truth of the matter finally. Quote, the Economic Administration head office wanted the prisoners preserved for the armaments industry. Since, however, Pohl allowed himself to be led astray by the Reichsführer's SS continual demands for even more labor, he unintentionally played into the hands of the Reich Security Head Office. Because of his insistence on the fulfillment of these demands, thousands of prisoners died at their work, since virtually all the basic necessities of life for such masses of prisoners were lacking. I guessed it at the time that this was happening, but was reluctant to believe it. Today, I can see the picture more clearly. I have now described what was the true and only background to it all, the dark shadows that lay behind the concentration camps. Thus, the concentration camps were intentionally, though sometimes unintentionally, transformed into huge-scale extermination centers. He's like, it kind of was, you know.
Kinda.
Definitely was. His time in the WVHA would not be long as he would be summoned back to Auschwitz, this time with the objective of supervising Operation Host, which was named after himself. You know.
But he didn't really want to do it, right?
Not at all.
Okay.
He was dead set against it. By 1944, things were looking pretty dang bad for the Nazis. They had lost Italy and North Africa. Their attempt to invade Britain was moot. They had lost the Battle of Stalingrad. Hitler had become super paranoid with outbursts of anger towards his ever-shrinking trusted inner circle. Rather than retreat, he wanted to proceed with unrealistic strategies which would result in the loss of even more German lives, as well as their counterparts. He would become increasingly reclusive, his health continuing to deteriorate. While it is known that he took an impressive cocktail of 90 pills a day, he regularly consumed methamphetamine, barbiturates, opiates, and cocaine, as well as potassium bromide and atropa belladonna, to name a few. He was possibly suffering from not only Parkinson's, but also tertiary syphilis. So lovely, right?
So you're telling me he liked to have a good time.
He loved a good I like that. There you go. Having been treated in his youth for syphilis, because the treatment had finally become available in 1910, it was unsuccessful, and the reappearance of his symptoms began in the late 1930s. By 1944, he was looking a whore 53 with a case of the ham tremblies. Okay. Why is this important, though? Well, it explains why he pushed through with the invasion of Hungary. Hungary had been an Axis power since 1941, even having sent soldiers to participate in Operation Barbarossa. However, to make a long story short, which is already too late at this point, by 1944, they were secretly trying to broker a separate peace agreement with the Allies. Like, oh, shit's getting real ugly. We need to go ahead and just get ahead of this, okay? Hitler was like, the hell you are. And Operation Margarethi was launched, with Germany invading Hungary and deposing their leader. Following this invasion, Hitler ordered Eichmann to arrange the transport of 500,000 Hungarian Jews to be exterminated. At the time of the invasion, Hungary had a Jewish population of 825,000, the largest still remaining in Europe at that time. It included Romanian and Czech Jews, as well as many of those who were trying to escape from the war to a relatively safer country, which turns out Hungary weren't it. They initially had insisted commands to deport Jews for extermination from 1942 to 1944, but eventually, I'm sure several factors, including a troubled government, dashed the false sense of security and safety that many had at the time. Host would be brought into the operation, which would be named after himself in May of 1944. Why Host? Because he was the man for exterminations. He had made Auschwitz pretty successful in their eyes. Also, the current commandant had us kind of caught up in some drama. And you know me, I'm here for the chisme. Let's talk about that. He apparently was engaged with a woman who had previously admitted to being what they called a race defiler, or as we would like to call it, tolerant. She had apparently had a relationship with a Jewish man, and by proxy, that commandant might as well have slept with the Jew himself. Just tawdry nonsense, basically. Regardless, they knew that he had to come in and use his knack for a consistent and efficient mass murder. He would also bring in his most trusted and experienced killing associates to prepare for the massive deportations to begin. He was sent to Hungary to determine the numbers to which they should expect and the state that those numbers would be in. Within 8 weeks of the invasion, and with the assistance of the Hungarian government, they were able to enact the Yellow Star and ghettoization laws, all to his advantage for review. He decided that, at best, they could expect only about 25% of the Jews to be able to join their slave labor force. Well, slaver, that works too.
Yeah.
Then he and Eichmann made a deportation plan. They were to use 45 cattle cars per train and 4 trains a day to deport 12,000 plus Jews from Budapest to Auschwitz, where our boy Rudy would be waiting.
At least they got to ride in a train and not walk it.
I don't know. Well, yeah, it's like, which is the lesser evil? Which is the least painful?
At least I can lay down on the train and sleep.
I mean, you wouldn't have any other option. They stuffed you in like
cattle,
sardines, cattle. That right on the nose.
This is so sad. Go ahead.
So, that's why we keep interjecting with our little witty jokes. To preserve the little bit of humanity in our hearts.
I know.
From there, they would be sorted. Those who could work, which was very few, were sent to places to work. The ones who were prime material for human experiments, especially experiments that would help benefit future soldiers. And finally, then you had the ones who were just no use and sent straight to the crematoria. Roughly 20% were chosen for experiments. That, in some cases, saved lives, while others were tortured and basically butchered to death and even thereafter. So, again, it's like, what's the best out of the worst?
Mm.
They got clever with their plundering. They would tell the Hungarian Jews they needed to take all their valuables and bring it with them. on the train. They made it seem like they were safe from death, and it was just really baiting them to get all their shit.
It's terrible.
Mm-hmm. With a plan in place, in May 1944, the deportations began, with the first holding 1,800 and the second holding 2,000, followed by another and another and another for 2 months. They would eventually have to pause the transports because they could not handle the rapid influx of prisoners. This meant Ruby had to trek all the way back to Budapest and just get things reorganized and get things going back efficiently.
Poor guy.
It's really tough being a Nazi. Pohl had visited at the height of the killings in June of 44, where he allowed them to resume burning bodies in pits, as well as building a fence around the crematoriums to contain the Hungarian Jews who had repeatedly tried to escape their deaths. It also was to help cover things up by expediently killing the evidence and burning it, both human and of the paper variety. This is where they were starting to let me get rid of everything. Mm-hmm. This is because in the midst of this summer of killing, the most deadly at this point of the war, the Allies stormed the beaches of Normandy. And they stormed the beaches of Normandy in June and were headed eastward by July, where they would end up in Paris by August, liberating France. The Allies are closing in, and the panic is quickly getting out of control within the Reich. So we're just shit's pandemonium, cats and dogs living together.
They're coming to whoop our ass.
Yeah. Things were also out of hand at Auschwitz-Birkenau. The Sonderkommando had now reached 900 members, and they worked around the clock burning bodies that wouldn't fit in the crematorium. Many victims remember that once the smoke from the crematorium stack started, they never again stopped. Having closed in 43, they ended up reopening crematorium number 4 again, and they were getting a little lazy with things, like not following procedures in gas chambers, resulting in people who would survive when they opened the doors. One of Rudy's most ruthless co-conspirators in this was said to make Dr. Mengele look human. His name was Otto Moll. He was known as Cyclops due to having a glass eye, but he was also known by his victims by another name, the Butcher of Birkenau. He served as the chief of the crematorium and extermination zone at Birkenau from 1943 to 45, a role that he took immense pleasure in because he caused extreme cruelty. After an accident, he suffered head trauma. We all know how that happens.
We do.
And it was believed he suffered from frontal lobe syndrome. Benjamin Jacobs, an involuntary Jewish dentist, would say, quote, he had straight blonde hair that was cut short. In his chiseled face were set a pair of cold blue eyes. Only one of them was real, for he had lost the other fighting in France. When he spoke, only the live eyes shifted. There seemed to be no real feeling in the heart beating beneath his bulging chest. Like, I wonder how obvious he made it, though, that he was looking at his fake eye. It makes me think
I was thinking was, man can paint a picture. I can feel like I'm in the room with that guy.
I just thought about Austin Powers when he saw the mole, like, mole, mole, mole. I just want to cut it up and make some guacamole. Gotta laugh somehow. A Sonderkommando prisoner named Heinrich Tauber would testify about Otto's involvement in the Hungarian deportations and Holocaust. Hauptscharführer Moll was one of the most degenerate of the lot. Before his arrival at the camp, he was in charge of the work at the bunkers, where they incinerated the gassed victims in pits. Then he was transferred for a while to another section. In view of preparation necessary for the, quote, reception of convoys from Hungary in 1944, he was put in charge of all the crematoria. It is he who organized the large-scale extermination of the people arriving in these convoys. Just before the arrival of the Hungarian transports, he ordered pits to be dug alongside Crematoria 5 and restarted the activity of Bunker 2, which had been lying idle and in the pits. In the yard of the crematoria, there were notices on the post with inscriptions telling the new arrivals from the transports that they were to go to where they were to go in camp, where work was waiting for them, but that they first had to take a bath and undergo de-infestation. For that, it was necessary for them to undress and put all their valuables in baskets specially placed for this purpose in the yard. Moll repeated the same thing in his speeches to new arrivals. There were so many convoys that sometimes it happened that the gas chambers were incapable of containing all the new arrivals. The excess people were generally shot one at a time, and often by Moll himself. On several occasions, Moll threw people into the flaming pits alive. He also practiced shooting people from a distance. He ill-treated and beat Sonderkommando prisoners, treating them like animals. Those who were in his personal service told us that he used a piece of wire to fish out gold objects from the box containing the jewels taken from new arrivals. Then he took them off in a briefcase. Among the objects left by the people who came to be gassed, he took furs and different types of foods, in particular fat. When he took food, he said smilingly to the SS around him that one had to take advantage before the lean years came.
This is all very disturbing.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, there are many quotes that are disturbing, but all of them speak of his cruelty, of finding an alive baby, stomping its throat, kicking a corpse into a fire, throwing live children into boiling hot fat left by the burned corpses, shooting women naked in different areas of their bodies so that they would fall into the fire and he could watch them burn. He would set children on fire and make them run to the electric fences, and just more. All of it disgusting, and his reputation was well known, as he was not only feared by prisoners but SS men alike. There was no way Höss was not aware of Otto's atrocities. He didn't stop him. They both testified at Nuremberg, and while Höss would admit to being a part of the Nazi killing machine, Otto would not. No one believed him, though, and he would be hung in 1946. Eventually, with the repeated attempts at peace talks, Allies were able to talk Hungary into halting the deportation in July, ending the operation. But it would only be temporary, as it would resume in October after threats from Hitler. Höss would be busy elsewhere, though, as he would be sent to Ravensbrück women's camp that November. His family had moved to a very nearby town in Ravensbrück, and he was ordered to go and attend to, you guess it, mass executions. And he had to build more crematoriums at Ravensbrück as well. He would speak on the state of things for the Wehrmacht. Quote, by the end of 1944, it was the same story everywhere. The Eastern Front was continuously being withdrawn, with the German soldier in the East no longer stood firm. The Western Front, too, was being forced back. Yet the Führer spoke of holding firm at all cost. Goebbels spoke and wrote about believing in miracles. Germany will conquer. For my part, I had great doubts whether we could win the war. I had seen and heard too much. Certainly, we could not win this way, but I dare not doubt our final victory. I must believe in it. But despite his attempt to keep that belief, he felt awkward as fuck when talking to his wife about it. Quote, my wife often asked me during the spring of 45, when everyone saw that the end was coming, how on earth could we win the war? Had we really got some decisive weapon in the reserve? And with a heavy heart, I could only say that she must have faith, for I did not dare tell what I knew. I could not discuss with anyone what I do and what I had seen and heard. It was a very long quote, but at the end, it was very telling with, quote, it was possible that our world would perish, so we had to win. Sorry, I left out a whole word. It was possible that our world would perish, so we had to win. While at Ravensbrück, he would oversee an extermination of 5,000 to 6,000 prisoners, as well as working to destroy any and all evidence of Nazi crimes. Unfortunately, unbeknownst to Rudy, his beloved Himmler had become a turncoat. He had secretly been trying to work with allies to secure more releases than murders, while simultaneously ordering for more murders and evidence destruction. He's like, no, we're not doing anything. Rudy would be summoned back to Auschwitz again in the spring of 45 to get a status on its evacuation. He would recall the insane chaos and how this was truly the end. So I'm going to condense a larger passage, because I know that I'm like getting heavy into quotes. Sometimes it's just better to hear directly from the horse's mouth.
Yeah.
Quote, I immediately drove on in the hope of reaching Auschwitz in time to make sure that the order of destruction of everything important had been properly carried out. But I was only able to get as far as Oder near Ratibor, for the Russian armored spearheads were already fanning out on the far side of the river. On all the roads and tracks in Upper Silesia, west of the Oder, I now met columns of its prisoners struggling through the deep snow. They had no food. Most of the non-commissioned officers in charge of the stumbling columns of corpses had no idea where they were supposed to be going. They only knew that their final destination was Gross Rosen. But how to get there was a mystery. On their own authority, they requisitioned food from the villages through which they passed, rested for hours, then trudged on again. There was no question of spending the night in barns, of schools, since these were all cramped with refugees. The route taken by these miserable columns, which they're talking about just lines of people, was easy to follow since every few hundred yards laid bodies of prisoners who had collapsed or been shot. On one occasion, as I uh, stopped my car by a dead body, I heard revolver shots quite near. So I ran towards the sound and saw a soldier in the act of stopping his motorcycle and shooting a prisoner leaning against a tree. I shouted at him, asking him what he thought he was doing and what harm the prisoner had done to him. He laughed impertinently in my face and asked me what I proposed to do about it. I drew my pistol and shot him forthwith. He was a sergeant major in the Air Force. Beside the road were not only dead prisoners, but also refugees, women, and children. Outside one village, I saw a woman sitting on a tree stump singing to her dead child as she rocked it in her arms. The child had been dead for a long time, and the woman was mad. Many women struggled through the snow, pushing perambulators stacked with their belongings. They had only one aim: to get away and to not fall into the hands of the Russians. I traveled to Breslau to tell them what was happening and to urge him to stop the evacuation. He showed me the wireless message from the Reichsführer SS, which was Himmler, which made him responsible for seeing that not a single healthy prisoner remained in any camp under his authority. Pretty much saying, kill them all.
Yeah.
At the railway station at Gross-Rosen, the transports coming in were immediately sent on. Only the smallest ones could be fed. Gross-Rosen itself had no more food. Dead SS men lay peacefully in open cars and between dead prisoners. Those still alive sat on top of them, chewing their piece of bread. Best not described. I lived through the evacuation in Sachsenhausen and Ravensbrück. The scene were the same here. Until the very end, I tried my utmost to bring some order to this chaos, but it was all in vain. We ourselves had to flee. What he was describing was the Auschwitz death march, where 56,000 prisoners were marched away from the front to other camps. The SS were destroying what they could: documents, prisoners, buildings, bodies, but with the volume and their extensive and diligent record-taking, it would make it impossible.
Good.
That's right. Good. Leave the evidence.
That's right.
In fact, this issue alone helped when prosecuting war crimes at the Nuremberg Trials later. These marches were chaotic, aimless, and above all lethal. Even as they marched through small villages, the prospect of the Allies being the enemy fast on the horizon caused a split in their approach to these prisoners. Some locals helped participate in the massacre of Jews and other prisoners, almost like a last-ditch fuck you. And then others would give what food and water they could, as it was really scarce. There's the difference between a good human with empathy and just being downright evil.
Yeah, there is.
Some 250,000 prisoners would perish on these death marches. One Hungarian Jewish poet named Miklos Radnóti. He was shot to death during a death march in November 1944 and buried in a mass grave. Months later, when they exhumed the grave, several poems were discovered in his clothes, including this one called Forced March. A fool he is who collapsed, rises and walks again, ankles and knees moving alone like wandering pain. Yet he, as if wings uplifted him, sets out on his way, and in vain the ditch calls him back, who dare not stay. And if he asked why not, he might answer, without leaving his path, that his wife was awaiting him, and a saner, more beautiful death. Poor fool, he's out of his mind, now for a long time. Only scorched winds have whirled over the houses at home. The wall had been laid low, the plum tree is broken there, the night of our native hearth flutters, thick with fear. Oh, if only I could believe that everything of worth were not just in my heart, that I still had a home on earth. If I only had, as before, jam made fresh from the plum, would cool on the old veranda, and peace the bee would hum. And as end of summer stillness would bask in the drowsy garden, naked among the leaves would sway the fruit tree's burden. And Fanny would be waiting, blonde by russet hedgerow, as the slow morning painted slow shadow over shadow. Could it perhaps still be the moon tonight so round? Don't leave me, friend, shout at me, I'll get up off the ground. With the KL system and other ruins, basically frantically moving and killing prisoners, those elite Nazis who were still allegiant, hosts included, headed towards the fortress north of Flensburg. He and his family had to flee, and Rudy would also escort other Nazi SS members, such as Theodor Eicke's widow, who had died. He had died in 1943 during the war. They had to run at night, avoiding air and land detection at all cost. Eventually, while on the run, he would receive news he did not expect. The Führer was dead by suicide. And it really did shock him. And I feel like it really shocked a lot of people Because till the end, he was like, no, 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 we're going to win, guys. This is all a part of the plan. Even though he himself had not been seen, I think, for months prior to his death. He just hid away in a bunker below Berlin. Host and his wife were shocked and contemplated also committed suicide. They decided against it, much to his later regret. Quote, nevertheless, because of the children, we did not do this. For their sake, we wanted to take our own shoulders what was coming. But we should have done it. I have always regretted it since. We would have all been spared a great deal, especially my wife and the children. How much more suffering will they have to endure?
Oh, get the fuck out of here.
We are bound and fettered to that other world, and we should have disappeared with it. And that's true. Well, maybe not their children, but the shitty people that were a part of it. I mean, and there was a lot of them that did, like, what do they call it? Family annihilators, basically. They killed their whole family, and
that
then they
tells you
killed
right
themselves.
there they knew what they were doing was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you'd have been like, why would I even think about killing myself? I was doing everything that was right.
Mm-hmm. Goebbels and his wife did that. They killed their children, and then they both committed suicide. Rudy would hear about his children's governess having left and stayed with her mother in St. Michael-Saudon on the very north coast of Germany. He decided to send his wife and all of his children, except the oldest son, to that area. It's hard to pronounce. For safety, and then he and his son proceeded towards Flensburg. What Host did not know is that just a few days prior to Hitler's suicide, Hitler had learned that Heinrich Himmler wasn't so honest after all, and he had been negotiating with the Allies. Hitler lost his shit, furiously stating that Himmler's secret negotiations were the worst treachery he's ever known. Regardless, Himmler would be headed to meet his loyal men, and they were not aware of this in Flensburg. They would get their last order from the Reichsfuhrer SS Heinrich Himmler on the first week of May 1945. He would learn that the KL system was no more, and Rudy would recall, quote, there was no more talk of fighting. Every man for himself was now the order of the day. I shall never forget my last meeting with the Reichsfuhrer SS. He was beaming and in the best spirits. Yet the world, our world, had crumbled beneath our feet. He said, well, gentlemen, this is the end. You know what you now have to do. So far, I understood him, since these words were in accordance with what he had been preaching to the SS for years. Self-sacrifice for the ideal. But then he gave us our last order. Hide in the army. Such was our farewell message for the man who I looked up to so respectively, in whom I had such implicit trust, whose orders and utterances had been gospel to me. That's why you don't trust anybody.
No, exactly.
Like, you don't trust me.
Oh, well, that's...
It's like 99.9%, but there's always that 0.01% that I could turn into a zombie. I could be possessed by a ghost. I'm just saying.
Those aren't bad things, though.
That's true. I would be a little nippy, though,
Still
if I was a zombie.
Still better than a Nazi.
Right? You're right. You're right, though. Zombies are indiscriminate. They eat everybody.
Everyone.
With that, he was basically on his own. He would send his driver away, taking his son back to Rudy's wife, Hedwig. He received false papers that would allow him to vanish into the Navy under the alias of Franz Lang. Their host would learn of Himmler's arrest in late May and his subsequent suicide. While Rudy had his own poison vial, he wasn't willing to throw the towel in and decided, I'm just going to keep on waiting. Seeing how he was attached to the Naval Intelligence School with false papers, he was able to stay close to his family and visit. Eventually, he had been given his previous occupation as farmer. He was able to move to a farm in Flensburg where he worked for 8 months. But in 1946, British intelligence forces managed to uncover the host family location. They would be found at a sugar factory where Hedwig had been working. There, she and the children will be questioned pretty savagely by some accounts. I read in some sources they beat the oldest child, Klaus, to get information out of him. And I think Klaus was like 16 or something. Still, you don't have to fucking beat the children. Okay? Well, I mean, what if he was wearing a Nazi? You know what? That's questions I don't need to be asking.
You know, it's hard for me to say any input because they're all a bunch of fucking Nazis.
Yeah,
so it's hard for me to be like, oh, don't hurt them. I know they're the kids, but like, if you're raised as a Nazi, you're probably going to become one. So I'm really trying to just not say anything.
Sometimes it's better that way.
It is. You know, my mom always said, if I don't have nothing nice to say, don't say anything.
Well, shit, what the hell would I say otherwise?
Same, girl, same. I'm just trying not to, say violence is the way, but in this instance, I feel like violence is the way.
Well, it was the way in this case because
he told it all, didn't he?
She told him all. Canary. Well, not him, but the mama did. The guy who had tried to interview them was so loud that Bridget, the daughter, said that she had headaches for years afterwards.
That sounds so Emma. I had to listen to him beat my brothers, and it gave me a headache.
And now it's never going away. She, Bridget herself was, like, while his son that was in the commandant's shadow seemed remorseful, although he did seem like he forgot a lot of fucking shit. Like, he acted like he never, he's like, what? There were fires every day? There was smoke and dead bodies? What? She was like, well, first off, Jews get their reparations, okay? They get their money, okay? She said, she was a little bit of a denier, too. She was like, well, they say all these Jews died. Well, why are there so many Jews still here? Man.
And this is why I don't have a strong case against not beating the children.
She died of cancer, if that makes you feel any better.
I hope it was very painful. I mean...
Hedwig did resist questioning, pretending that she didn't know anything until they threatened to send her sons to Siberia. That's when she gave up Rudy's location pretty quickly. Just that yelling and saying, like, I'm going to fuck your children up. I'm going to send them out there by themselves. Say, I hope for the best.
Children are the weak link.
I'm just saying they look kind of soft. Looks like they just been playing in a garden at a fucking camp. An official army report dated March 15, 1946, Camp Victor Cross sent information on his arrest. Quote, after 5 months of continuous investigations, interrogations, and extensive searches, this section has succeeded in arresting SS Obersturmbannführer host Rudolph Franz Ferdinand, who commanded the notorious Auschwitz concentration camp, which was built under his supervision. They would find Rudy in his pajamas in the early hours of March 11th. He was awakened by what he thought was a robbery, because that had been happening a lot in the area. And then he quickly realized he was caught. He kept saying, like, no, I'm Franz Lang. I'm Franz Lang.
They were like, the fuck you are?
They're like, fuck you are, beat the shit out of him. And they're like, you know what? Take off that wedding ring. And on the inside of his wedding ring, it has him and Hedwig's actual names on it. It's like, oh!
Dummy. All people always got to hold on to trinkets. That's what gets you caught.
It says sentimental, gets you caught. He would recall morsefully, quote, my vial of poison had broken just 2 days prior.
Oh,
British intelligence would take him back to the barracks where he was held in 8 months prior under his alias. He was in this, it was just like a transit prison. After the war and all the Allies were going through all the Germans being like, are you culpable? Are you a Nazi? Or are you going to play nice? Are we going to be tolerant now? In a moment of inglorious bastards, the person who personally apprehended Rudy was Hans Alexander, a Jew who immigrated from Germany to London in 1939.
Oh, yeah, baby. We about to get real now. Guess what, motherfucker? I'm a Jew.
He would state that they treated him badly.
Aww.
Based on the picture after his capture, I would say so, but it was rightly deserved, so no tears were being wept for him.
None. Not a ne'er one. Dry as can be over here.
Look at that, like a fucking Sahara. Hans would say that they beat him with axe handles, and after a period of internal debate, he finally pulled his fellow soldiers off of Rudy. He's like, you know what, though? We really do need him for this trials and stuff coming up.
Slow walking. He's like, no. Stop.
Squirrel?
Oh, hold on, wait. Oh, wait, no. Don't.
Exactly. You know what? It'd be a shame if I looked away for a few minutes.
Gonna tie my shoe real quick, but I'm in a hurry.
I'll be right there. You just hold on. Hans would become a banker and never really spoke about this after the war. It wasn't until after he died that his nephew, Thomas Harding, heard his story and wrote Hans and Rudolph about the whole capture. They would find a whip in Hedwig's luggage, and they insisted that we're like, you used that on Jews, didn't you? And he's like, I did not. I never even used it on my horse.
First of all, your face when you were like, they were like, yeah, you used that right.
We know you did it.
Stop lying.
So they flogged him with the whip, rightfully so.
Yay! Finally, the story gets good.
Eventually, he would admit it made sense, and they were so intense.
Wait a minute, hold on. He says, I mean, it makes sense to think I used the whip, but I didn't.
Well, he said it made sense that they were so intense because they were Jews.
Oh, okay. See, I should have jumped ahead. He's right.
The self-restraint to only beat him had to be tough. That's what he said. He would write an affidavit with some of the figures of the camp, implicating himself and others. Quote, I was commandant of Auschwitz until the 1st of December 1943, and I estimate that at least 2.5 million victims were executed and exterminated in gas chambers or crematories. Mass executions.
I mean, max.
Same.
They were at max capacity of the incinerators, so.
It began during the summer of 1941 and lasted until the fall of 1944. I supervised personally the executions in Auschwitz until the 1st of December 1943.
And then I went on Christmas break. Sorry.
I just started thinking about the Griswolds.
And when I came back, we started the bitches right back up. Sorry, y'all.
This is way better than the actual quote. I'm just saying. It's much more light and airy than saying, after I constructed the extermination building in Auschwitz, I used Cyclone B, a crystallized prussic acid, which was thrown into the death chambers through a small opening. See, I like yours better.
Right.
I love a Becky remix.
Thanks.
Eventually, he would be moved again, flown back to Germany, where he would sit for a few weeks. The few weeks in which he would have written this whole biography. It was a very short amount of time. One day, he was suddenly cleaned up and placed in a lorry. In quick order, he was taken to Nuremberg to be a witness in the trials, which were in full motion by then. Do you know much about the trials? I didn't.
I don't.
I just knew that the Nuremberg trials were after the war, and it was where Allies were all working together to bring these major Nazis to trial. And they lasted for years.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And they had other trials later on. Like, they've had trials in the last, I don't know, say 15 years to prosecute Nazi war criminals, which they're fixing to be extinct. They're like 100 years old now. But I digress.
They're endangered right now. They're not extinct yet. They're endangered.
They're endangered. I wish they were extinct, but you know what? I feel like they keep cropping up these days. Yeah. Ernst Kaltenbrunner was another Nazi on trial, and his attorney had summoned Host as a defense witness. Rudy was confused, though, saying, quote, I was in Nuremberg because Kaltenbrunner's counsel had demanded me as a witness for his defense. I have never been able to grasp, and it is still not clear to me how I, of all people, could have helped exonerate Kaltenbrunner. It's like, sir. Come on now. Kaltenbrunner's attorney felt that he could use Host to distance his defendant from the killing, except here's an excerpt from the trial where I will translate. The attorney says, is it true that in 1941 you were ordered to Berlin to see Himmler? And Host said, yes, sir. In the summer of 1941, I was summoned to Berlin to see the Reichsfuhrer SS Himmler to receive personal orders. He told me that the Fuhrer had given the order to the final solution of the Jewish question. The attorney said, did you ever talk with Kaltenbrunner with reference to your task? And Host said, no, never. What would happen would piss off the gallery following this. He would start spilling his guts. He would tell everything from his Nazi lens, of course. He was, to the day he died, a staunch Nazi. So, quote, I remain, as I have always been, a convinced National Socialist in my attitude to life. When a man has adhered to a belief and an attitude for nigh on 25 years, has grown up with it, and become bound to it, body and soul, he cannot simply throw it aside because the embodiments of this ideal, the National Socialist state and its leaders have used their powers wrongly and even criminally. And because, as a result of this failure and misdirection, his world has collapsed and the entire German people have been plunged for decades into untold misery, I, at least, cannot. It's just circles.
Yeah.
Basically. What I mean by this is that he was indoctrinated, really. While some of the upper echelon, like Himmler, had folded in the waning days of the Wehrmacht, he stood constant because he absolutely, without a doubt, 100% believed it. He believed in it like the sky is blue and the grass is green, matter of fact, a belief.
Yeah, sounds like he does.
And that's really they did so good at brainwashing homie, which, I mean, it takes two to tango in that regard. You have to be receptive to brainwashing. But he so brainwashed that it ended up being a weapon they got used against them.
Right.
With that indoctrination, I guess embarrassment isn't a thing. So it was a huge dismay to Goering and Hess and the rest of the Nazis in the defendant's box when an affidavit written by Host is introduced by the prosecution. Here's a portion of that affidavit read by Colonel John Amman with Rudy's response. Amman said, "The final solution of the Jewish question meant the complete extermination of all Jews in Europe. I was ordered to establish extermination facilities in Auschwitz in June 1941. At that time, there were already in the general government 3 other extermination camps, Belchek, Treblinka, and Wolczek. These camps were under the Einsatzkommando and the security police and SD. I visited Treblinka to see how they carried out their exterminations. The camp commandant at Treblinka told me that they had liquidated 80,000 in the course of 1/2 year. He was principally concerned with liquidating all the Jews from the Warsaw Ghetto. He used monoxide gas, and I did not think that his methods were very efficient. So when I set up the extermination building at Auschwitz, I used Cyclone B, which was crystallized prussic acid, which we dropped into the death chamber from a small opening. It took 3 to 15 minutes to kill the people in the death chamber, depending upon climatic conditions. We knew when the people were dead because their screaming stopped. We usually waited about 1/2 hour before we opened the doors and removed the bodies. After the bodies were removed, our special commandos took off the rings and extracted the gold from the gold from the teeth of the corpses. Is that true and correct, witness?" Host goes, "Yes." With that yes, they concluded cross-examination. Goring was stirring around, almost shocked that Host would divulge the orders of the Führer. How dare you?
Well, look, he took off and left us here to answer for all this. So
saying he took a quick way out, okay?
Yeah.
He's
my little vial of poison broke and I can't.
Thank you. Eventually, his testimony would be one of the many that helped find these Nazis guilty of war crimes. In their statements to the courts, they seemed to have a still confidence in their actions with Hess, which was another Rudolph, which was there's a lot of confusion. Like if you do Rudolph Host and you Google that, they're going to pull off Rudolf Hess, which is a higher Nazi, more famous, but also was on trial. See, they said to the court, "Even if I could, I would not want to erase this period of time from my history. I am happy to know that I have done my duty as a loyal follower to my Führer. I regret nothing." 10 defendants would be sent to death, including Göring and Kaltenbrunner. Those who were sentenced to die were hung at 1 a.m. on October 16, 1946. They chose the standard drop hanging method, but the trapdoor was a tad too small, so many of the executed suffered facial damages, and nobody really cares.
No.
It's just a little something for you to enjoy. You know what I mean? I did look up standard drop, which is considered a, quote, humane hanging. The standard drop involves a drop between 4 and 6 feet because it was intended to be enough to break the person's neck, causing immediate unconsciousness and rapid brain death. People did move on to the long drop method, which was a scientific advance on the standard drop. Instead of everyone following the same distance in the long drop method, they use a person's height and weight to determine how much slack would be provided in the rope so that the distance dropped would be enough to ensure that the neck is broken, but not so much that the person would be decapitated, because that has happened in hangings. Too much rope and too much force makes the head just boop.
So maybe that's where the saying came from. Give them just enough rope to hang themselves with.
Yes.
Just enough.
Probably. Jimmy, that's a fun fact. That sounds like a fun fact.
Jimmy's Fun Facts. The phrase give them enough rope to hang themselves means to allow someone the freedom or opportunity to make their own mistakes or to expose their own faults, often leading to their own downfall. It suggests that by not intervening and letting someone act on their own, they may ultimately create a situation that leads to their failure or self-destruction. The expression is often used in contexts where a person is deemed to be making poor choices or behaving irresponsibly, and it implies that their actions will backfire on them. But I can't lie, I kind of prefer the association with hanging better.
This also, like the way they placed the knot of the noose was so that the head was jerked back as the rope tightened, and it contributed to breaking the neck.
Do you know what that break's called?
No, I don't.
The hangman's. There is
I
a
like
break
it.
in the neck called the hangman's.
The hangman's neck break. I like it. Goring would actually commit suicide that night with a cyanide pill. It's believed to have been smuggled in by his wife. The rest received prison sentences, with just 3 being acquitted, but mostly due to deadlocks by the jury. After discussions with hosts during the Nuremberg trial at which he testified, American psychologist Gustav Gilbert wrote the following description of Host during his testimony. In all of the discussions, Host is quite matter-of-fact and apathetic, shows some belated interest in the enormity of his crime, but gives the impression that it never would have occurred to him if somebody hadn't have asked him. There is too much apathy to leave any suggestion of remorse, and even the prospect of hanging does not unduly stress him. One gets the general impression of a man who is intellectually normal, but with a schizoid apathy, insensitivity, and lack of empathy that could hardly be more extreme and a frank psychotic. There would be more trials eventually, and even to this day, people search for the last few living Nazis to bring them to justice, if they're still living. As for Rudy, let's follow him to the next to last stop in his life, his own trial. In May of 1946, he'd be handed over to the Polish authorities. He would say that at first he was treated well, but then that changed, and they gave him poultry to no rations, and that there was a particular Polish guard who was Jewish that he said, quote, never tired of beating us.
I think you guys did the same thing.
He waited nearly a year for his trial, in which the Warsaw Tribunal would go through everything they had, including his own affidavit. I would go over it except for the fact it's repeating the whole damn podcast, and I think we've covered enough there.
We have. We're good. Thanks.
The trial lasted from March 11th to March 29th, 1947, ending with a guilty verdict and a death sentence handed down on April 2nd. They set the date for 2 weeks from then on, April 16th, and this is when he finishes up the biography. 114 pages by his account, with the last few pages seeming like he was at peace with what would be happening and finally taking some accountability.
Got it. Nailed it.
Quote, a great deal happened in Auschwitz, which was done ostensibly in my name, under my authority and on my orders, which I neither knew about nor sanctioned. But all the things happened at Auschwitz, and so I am responsible for the camp regulations, and say the camp commandant is fully responsible for everything that happens in his sphere. I say some because he farmed about 90% of the responsibility to Himmler and the others for most of the book. I'm just saying.
I believe it.
At the end, he began to speak about all his near-death experiences, from car crashes to bombings, even the vile poison breaking, as signs that he was meant to die this way. Quote, on every occasion, fate has intervened to save my life so that at last I might be put to death in a shameful manner. How greatly I envy those of my comrades who died a soldier's death. Unknowingly, I was a cog in the wheel of the great extermination machine created by the Third Reich. The machine has been smashed to pieces, the engine is broken, and I, too, must now be destroyed. The world demands it.
Yes, we do.
Yes, ma'am. The last thing he says is, whenever use is made of what I have written, I beg that all those passages relating to my wife and my family and all my tender emotions and secret doubts shall not be made public.
Fuck you.
But the public continue to regard me as a bloodthirsty beast, the cruel sadist, and the mass murderer. For the masses could never imagine the commandant of Auschwitz in any other light. They could never understand that he too had a heart and that he was not evil.
Whatever.
So please enjoy every savory moment of his tender words and secrets, for this man was evil. He was so evil, he didn't know he was evil.
So evil, he didn't know.
The day after his verdict, former prisoners petitioned the court for the execution to take place on the grounds of Auschwitz.
Oh, yes. Let his ghost spirit haunt there with all them motherfuckers, and I hope they can beat him up in the ghost world.
It was scheduled for April 14th, but postponed due to the fears of the Auschwitz residents. They thought that they would try to intervene and lynch him. Which,
Good.
I mean, it's
And?
still the same fucking result. Why are we stopping this? But
Yeah.
anyways, who am I? You know?
Maybe it was just a little mental torture. It'll be tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes and it's like, we're coming tomorrow.
So his execution would be the last public execution of a Nazi. Reason being that apparently people were making a whole ass affair and bringing their children and then fighting over pieces of the hangman's rope.
Why'd we stop doing that? Sounds great. Everybody should see this motherfucker hang.
Yes.
I would take my children. This what happens.
This
when you
what
fuck around and
happens.
find out.
And
you don't like people just because of what they believe. Don't be like him. It's a good learning lesson, honestly.
Fuck around, find out needs to be a very important lesson people are teaching,
Yes,
not just their children, but their spouses, their parents,
exactly.
their relatives. Y'all need to learn that not everything is anonymous, okay?
Thank you.
You're going to have to answer for what you say and what you do and the hate that you put in this world.
Yes.
I was on a Facebook group for Lee City. And this lady was talking some trash about like immigrants or this or that. And she was like blatant, like racist.
Him? She was like him?
Yeah, pretty much. And so I looked at her profile and I realized she has a business. So I was like, she was talking about anybody could look up and see what you voted for in the last election and this and that and like all about this voter suppression. And I was like, and just like anybody could look at your Facebook profile and learn that you have a business and know which pest control business not to fucking use. She deleted everything she wrote.
Oh, I bet so.
Through that whole fucking thread.
Oh, I bet so. But bitch, we got screenshots. We got receipts.
Don't write checks with your mouth that your reputation can't cash, baby.
Because now I need to find out. We need to get our house sprayed. The mosquitoes are bad. So let me know who not to use.
Got you, boom. Got you, fam. Let's see. They kept his execution low-key with about 100 people showing up that morning, which were mostly Polish officials and victims of the KL system. He would be brought to Auschwitz, he toured his old office and drank a cup of coffee before being stored in the infamous Block 11. German POWs built the gallows right next to one of the crematoriums. At 10 a.m., he was brought out and placed on the trapdoor. After being read his sentence at 10:08, he was dropped as a priest spoke a prayer for the dying.
Hold on, let me pause. You said the gallows were built by the POWs?
By
so
German
the surviving
POWs.
Jews or no?
No.
Oh.
The German,
Damn,
German
that
soldiers.
would have been some poetic justice if the surviving Jews got to build that to go watch them all get hung that tortured them and killed their family. God, that would have been great.
Well, they were there at least to watch it.
Okay. I wish they would have been able to build it, but whatever.
By 10:21, he was pronounced dead. It is entirely possible the German POWs were the executioners, or at least the ones who opened the trap door. And if you recall that when I was talking about the standard drop hanging, I told you that style because for Rudy, they used the short drop method. The short drop method is a method of hanging in which the condemned prisoner stands on a raised support, such as a stool, ladder, cart, horse, or other vehicle.
And they kick that bitch out from under.
Mhm.
Yes.
Used starting in the biblical times, it's not always 100% effective as some people survive while others die slow deaths. They often do not have a broken neck, leading to prolonged pain and suffering. So if that gives you any comfort, he probably suffered.
Good.
But it's still a drop in the bucket of suffering that happened in Auschwitz.
That's true.
What happened to his family, though?
Who gives a
Well,
fuck?
Bridget would have immigrated to America, where she would be a Balenciaga model. Her mother, who lived in Stuttgart under a different name in obscurity beginning in the 60s, would go to America in 1983 to visit her and died while visiting Bridget.
Sad.
Klaus, the oldest son, died in Australia in the 80s from chronic alcohol abuse. Heidi in 2020, Bridget in 2023 both died from cancer. Being the first of the host children to speak out, she's quite fucking vocal with the few interviews of her. Here's another quote.
Did she say, he didn't do nothing wrong. He was just at home being a good boy?
Oh, no, it's better. It's, quote, the Nazis always get bad press and no one else does.
Not true, but okay.
Stop. Hans and Annegret are still alive. Annegret was born in Auschwitz and just a baby, so only Hans has memory of it. but he was 3 when he moved in Auschwitz and 6 when they left. Hans got married, had kids, then divorced and remarried. And that's when he became a Jehovah's Witness, which is very interesting when I recall how Rudy viewed them. Because they hated Jehovah's Witnesses. It was like the number one.
I mean, I'm not a fan of the knocking on my door, but I don't dislike them.
Yeah. I'm not into a death camp situation. Just keep your hands off my door.
Yeah. Out my yard.
Get out of my grass.
Get off my lawn.
Hans has 2 sons, Klaus and Kai. Kai is a preacher who has largely remained out of the public eye, but did appear in the commandant's shadow. And by all accounts, he's the complete opposite of his grandfather. Rainier, which is the younger brother, is said by Kai to be the curse on our family because of our grandfather's crimes. He has been arrested for defrauding investors and Holocaust victims alike as recently as 2020.
Hold on. Back up. Read that to me one more time.
So he has 2 sons.
Just about the Rainier. He's gotten all the bad luck from what his dad did?
No, Rainier is said by Kai to be the curse on their family because of their grandfather's crimes.
Okay. I thought saying he was cursed, poor him. And I'm like, defrauding Holocaust survivors sounds like it's of your own doing. Yeah. It's no curse that's hanging out.
He actually even sold his and Kai's mother's home and stuck her in a retirement home and pocketed the proceeds.
Well, they're all fucking evil. They share his blood, so whatever.
Right. Regardless, Kai has been far more vocal recently, 1, against his brother, as he is ashamed of what he has done to the other victims, and 2, to educate people.
He's the one that's a preacher now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's the only good one.
Yep. And he lives in Germany. He's married to a woman of Asian descent. I can't remember if she was Filipino. I'm not exactly sure, but their kids speak like 4 languages.
Oh, wow.
I mean, their lives are beautiful comparatively.
Yeah.
It's what making the right decisions puts you at, you know?
Yeah. Showing it's not always how you were raised. You can do something different.
Mm-hmm. Rudy wrote his wife and children letters prior to his death, and then this one particular portion directed to his oldest son, to me, shows that he possibly did have some remorse in the waning hours of his life, that he did not wish this path for his children. Quote, "Keep your good heart. Become a person who lets himself be guided primarily by warmth and humanity. Learn to think and judge for yourself responsibly. Don't accept everything without criticism as absolutely true. The biggest mistake of my life was that I believed everything faithfully which came from the top, and I didn't dare to have the least bit of doubt about the truth of that which was presented to me. In all your undertakings, don't let your mind speak, but listen above all to the voice in your heart." And it's crazy that he said that. Like at the end, he's like, yeah, I listened and I should not have.
Yeah.
I put myself.
Should have thought of others.
It's like me in that old jail. I put myself in a room ready to be murdered. And I was just lucky that they really did work for them. You know? When I say remorse, I feel like he takes only that small slice of responsibility that he should have bucked orders. Not much more. So please don't think he was turning into Mr. Rogers, though.
Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah.
Trust me, we don't.
Though that's the only lesson, to never trust implicitly. Make your own decisions and do so responsibly. Besides that, the best lesson is don't be a fucking Nazi. The end. Good fucking riddance.
Preach.
And that's it, guys.
Thank God.
We finished that shit. We finished it.
That was terrible. It's important to know those things and keep us educated so we don't repeat the past. But, oh, that was painful.
Boy, but are we repeating it right now, if ever?
Let's not even get into that.
No. But like I said at the beginning, at the top of the series, even though it feels like we are repeating it, we are different people than they were then. We have different advantages. We have different education, and we have the ability to change that future. So keep that empathy in your heart.
Yes.
Don't be a Nazi on your deathbed going like, I should have been nicer. While hell licks at your asshole, okay?
Yes, just waiting to get that bitch.
So now that we're done with that, don't forget to find us on our socials. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on the TikTok. I don't know if you guys have seen Jimmy's fun fact videos.
They're amazing, seriously. If for no other reason, go watch those.
It's fun because Jimmy is...
He's smart and he's adorable and he's silly.
He is, but he doesn't like when when people first meet him, he looks so serious. He's so quiet. And then you realize he's this huge goofball.
See, when I first meet Jimmy, he looks scared and like Jennifer beats him and locks him in a closet.
I mean, I do beat him. I mean, no, wait, I don't. This is not recorded. Ugh. Whoops.
Just kidding.
It's another Turpin family. I'm just kidding. Oh my God, that got ugly. Oh, I am awful at jokes, guys. Okay. I will never, people are like,
First of
why
all,
aren't you a
you're great at
comedian?
them. They're hilarious.
Why aren't you a comedian? Because I say some off the cuff shit sometimes that I don't need to be saying.
Saying.
So don't forget to check out our merch. Let us know about your own Too Close to Home stories. Don't forget to rate and subscribe on all platforms. And above all,
Stay safe.
keep your head on a swivel.
And don't bring it so close to home that you bring home trinkets you ripped out of people you killed's mouth and give them to your children.
Yeah, not cool, fam.
Don't do that. It's not nice.
Be tolerant.
Yes.
Fuck around, find out.
Not
Bye.
even be tolerant, be acceptable. Accept people.
Yeah, accept people. There you go.
Tolerant, I don't like that word. Accept them.
Yeah, that makes a good point. Tolerate me sounds like it's I have to.
Yeah. No.
Welcome them.
Yes.
Become.
That's right.
Bye.
Bye.
Makes me think of cabaret. Welcome, bienvenue, welcome. If you enjoyed this episode of Too Close to Home, don't forget to rate and subscribe to us on most platforms. Follow us on our social media at Too Close Home Pod on Facebook, at Too Close Podcast on Instagram, or if you have your own Too Close to Home experience, shoot us your story at tooclosetohome@yahoo.com. Thanks for listening.